Happy New Year. Welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Church of St. Petersburg. I'm Randy Nolan.
And I'm Michael Kulorin.
It's good to be with you this morning. We light our chalice now as a symbol of our search for truth, our shared communion, and our growing light of understanding and caring. Join, if you will, in the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Good morning. My name is Susan Bernauer, and I'm a grateful member of this church. I'm especially grateful today to Michael Kulorin, Randy Nolan, John Arterton, and James Mack for pulling this service together. We often have a children's story at this point in the service, led by Pastor Jack or our religious education coordinator, Janae Johnson, often with participation by the kids in our church. Janae and Jack are taking a little time off today, and I'd like to take this time to, instead of a story, to say thank you. First to Janae and Miss Trish and all the other grown-ups who make our classes and activities and newsletter for young people happen. And especially a big thank you to the wonderful children and teens and college-age young adults that we call our RE kids. Listen, young ones, you are the reason we have hope for the future. You are the reason we're optimistic for 2021 and for the next 106 years of our church, and for the next 245 years for our country. You are so important to us. We're proud of you and all the things you do to be kind and helpful. And along with our thank you, a promise that the grown-ups in this church are here for you and for your parents, to be your church family. We are people who love you, and we are ready to help you anytime you need us. Now, before we move on with our service, it's a moment for sharing joys and concerns. The sadness on many of our hearts this morning is for the death of UU St. Pete member Candace Nelson, after a long struggle with neurodegenerative disease. Robert and Cynthia Alicea were particularly supportive to Candace over the last years of her courageously resisted decline. Robert wrote the following for us. On the night of the winter solstice, as Jupiter aligned with Saturn, our friend and fellow congregant Candace Nelson left this world. At the end, she turned away the offer of sedation so as to experience her dying with the same clarity she observed her life. Everyone who knew Candace was truly lucky to have done so. If you're watching this as it premieres at 10:30 on Sunday morning, you can type in your own joys and concerns in the chat to the right of the screen. Or you can send them to Reverend Donovan and he'll share them with the congregation next week. For announcements and news about our church, it's best to go to our website, uustpete.org. Please remember, it's our church building that is closed, not our church. A pandemic can't close a community of loving, giving people.
Good morning. My name is Janae Johnson, and I'm the Religious Education and Communications Coordinator here at Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Petersburg, Florida. This year, along with Karen Cole, I will be introducing our Guests at Your Table segment with the theme entailing the meaning of home.
The tradition is to put the box on your dining room table and share your meal with the 4 guests by putting the cost of feeding them into the box. However, most people simply write a check out at the end of the campaign.
For many of us, our relationship with home has intensified this year. The pandemic has given many of us a new appreciation for and concerns about the places we'll call home and the centrality of these places in our lives. This year, during the Guests at Your Table, we invite you to witness stories of our partners around the world as they tell you about home.
Our partners in Central America are working to make sure that no one is forced to flee their home due to violence or economic devastation. Our partners in Alaska, Louisiana, and the Pacific are fighting for their homes and ancestral lands against the ravages of extractive industries and climate change. And our partners in Burma, Bangladesh, and beyond are working tirelessly to support the rights of Rohingya, ethnic minority of Burma, after facing government-backed genocide in their homeland.
The ways in which our congregation and families come together may look different, but the beloved tradition of Guests at Your Table is here and needs your support.
Today, we would like you to meet our first guest, Chief Cheryl Harpray Kardar.
You never know the meaning of home until you've lived in more than one. I've been many places in my short lifetime. Different states, another country, different people and surroundings, but I've always longed for it and returned home. There's nothing like the smell of the fresh morning air when you first step outside your front door down the bayou. The dampened leaves and grass, and the smell of the bayou right across your street. If you could ever smell peacefulness, that would be it. We will continue to fight for our way of life, for ours is unlike any other. We will fight until the last tree has died, until the last bit of land has washed away. We will always fight for our home.
Hello, I'm Laura Randall from UUSC, and I'm here to say thank you so much for your participation in this year's Guest at Your Table program. With all of the adaptation, uncertainty, and sorrow this year has brought us, your congregation is acting as a beacon of hope and solidarity for our grassroots partners around the world. Guest at Your Table is a long-standing tradition in our congregations and provides a unique opportunity every year to get to know some of our partners on a deeper level. Learning someone's story can be a sacred act, and it is one that we celebrate through Guest at Your Table.
Happy birthday, UU St. Pete. Like so many good things, it all started with one strong woman. In 1914, when the population of St. Petersburg was just under 5,000 souls, Mrs. Pearl Cole, a liberal Universalist, dreamt of building a church. When she shared her dream with the newly arrived West family, the first Universalist Society of St. Petersburg was born. Well, fast forward to 1925, and with our first settled minister, a bold visionary decision was made to join the two liberal churches, the Universalists and the Unitarians, to become the United Liberal Church. This historic merger of Unitarians and Universalists was 36 years ahead of its time, a proud part of our unique heritage. By 1927, at a meeting attended by 150 people, the congregation voted unanimously to build a permanent home, our beloved Spanish colonial revival structure facing Mirror Lake. Just 11 years later, our congregation grew to 539 under the leadership of the Reverend Dr. George Gilmore, for whom Gilmore Hall is named. The United Liberal Church. We kept that word, liberal, until 1973. I've met folks who both remember and lament the loss of that name that proclaimed our liberal values writ large to the people of St. Petersburg. Liberal, willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions that are different from one's own, being open to new ideas. And of course, our liberatory faith, a pathway and a foundation to liberation. As president of our congregation, I attend monthly Zoom meetings with UU leaders in our southern region, where we discuss many topics like our current liminal state and how we carefully begin to think about reopening. Many of us look back and yearn for normalcy. But the past year has brought a greater awareness that normal was actually pretty awful for a lot of people, including many of our neighbors. This summer, the whole world witnessed the brutality of systemic racism, as well as a new generational awakening of the ongoing struggle for human rights, for equality, equity, and racial justice. We're still living with the virus that disproportionately affects people of color, and far too many people are losing loved ones and losing their livelihood. But we're still adapting quickly, and we all know that change is still inevitable. For 10 months, we've been squares on a screen, something that Mrs. Pearl Cole could not have possibly imagined. In fact, none of us could have imagined this back in January. And when we do reopen, we're going to have to continue learning how to keep both feet planted in both the digital and the physical world simultaneously. Looking back on our early years, I can't help but wonder, would I have been welcome in our early liberal church? How did our liberal church coexist in a segregated city? Our history gives us good insight into our liberal, liberatory faith tradition, a tradition that continues to change, continues to evolve, and mark progress in alignment with our ever-changing world. In fact, it wasn't until the late 1970s and 80s, and even later, that an openly gay man like myself might have been welcomed in some, but not all, UU congregations. So, on our 106th birthday, what makes me optimistic about our future? Well, 3 things immediately come to mind. First, there's a vaccine. Second, we're being very good stewards of the building legacy that has been entrusted to us. In fact, your response to the kitchen renovation has been an extraordinary display of generosity, and all in the middle of a pandemic. And that's only possible because you have remained connected and steadfast in adapting and changing with the new environment that we find ourselves in. Third, I recently listened to a podcast by Michelle Norris, who was interviewing Barack Obama about his new book. As the father of 2 Generation Z girls, the last thing that Obama said was how encouraged he is by young people. He said, and I quote, "Young people do not have to be convinced about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. They get it right away. They're already there." When I shared this comment with Carol Ulmer, she reminded me that a young Barack Obama spent a lot of time with his grandparents, who were Unitarian Universalists. So yes, the world continues to change and evolve, and so do we, and so does our faith. And if we continue to live out our faith, the world does indeed become a better place. Ever the optimist, even in the face of reality, my hope is that we, as a congregation, all look forward in imagining our next 100 years, and that we will all continue to do our part to bend the moral arc of the universe toward justice. Thank you, Mrs. Pearl Cole. Happy birthday, UU St. Pete, and Happy New Year to all.
Better times will come, better times will come, when this world learns to live as one. Oh, better times will come, when we greet each dawn without fear, knowing loved ones soon will be near. When the winds of war cannot blow anymore, oh, better times will come. Better times will come. Better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Though we live each day as our last, knowing someday soon it will pass, we will dance, we will sing in that never-ending spring. Oh, better times will come. Better times will come. Better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Better times will come. Better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Oh, better times will come.
To keep our congregation thriving, may we remember our connection to one another. And let us not forget our contributions to support the means to those connections. If you're watching today on a mobile device or computer, please hover your finger or cursor in the upper right corner of your screen and click on the I in the small white circle. You can also donate at uusp.org under the Giving tab, or by sending a check to the church office. Many thanks.
I'll start with words from the hilarious Dave Barry. He wrote, "We're trying to think of something nice to say about 2020. Okay, here goes. Nobody got killed by the murder hornets, as far as we know." Yeah, it was a rough one. And yes, I know that many of the roughest parts of 2020, the pandemic, the politics, the very existence of the Houston Astros baseball team, those are continuing and will surely be a strain on 2021. Even so, we are metaphorically and physically turning the page on our calendars to a new year. We've all read and heard discussions of personal growth and discovery that happened in 2020. That's been covered, so instead, I want to remind us of some of the good things in the news. This list is in part from a Tampa Bay Times article that James shared with me. In 2020, the St. Pete Pier opened after 9 years of political, financial, and artistic wrangling, and it's better than we could have hoped for. Sports in Tampa Bay were the most successful year ever, with the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup, the Rays going to the World Series, and the Bucks going to the playoffs with Tom Brady at quarterback. The art scene in St. Petersburg flourished, including what I and many others consider the very best Black Lives Matter street mural in the whole country. There were incredible medical advancements. The Times writer said, "Wrap your head around this. Moderna's coronavirus vaccine was designed in January. It was already manufactured before the first American death. Then it was just clinical trials. The previous speed record for a vaccine was one for the monks, and that took 4 years. In 2020, animal shelters practically emptied as people adopted pets in record numbers, saving animals' lives and brightening people's. Women's influence in political decision-making continued to increase, which can only help. The country elected its first female vice president, and St. Petersburg now has 6 women on the 8-person city council. A Tampa man saw a sign on the back of an SUV, "My husband needs an O-positive kidney," and donated one of his to a complete stranger. Despite fears of a disastrous election day, our officials pulled off a pretty flawless event. No fighting or threats at polling places. Our country pretty much accomplished the hallmark of democracy, safe and peaceful elections. And my personal favorite new entry in the Guinness Book of World Records, the most watched YouTube video ever, is Baby Shark Dance. The simplest, silliest video you'll ever see. Just 2 adorable children singing and dancing to a song I cannot now get out of my head. I'm actually thrilled to know that more people are watching this tiny celebration of childhood and glee than are watching political rants. This year at UU St. Pete, it's hard to believe, but it was just 10 months ago in March that with a 98% vote, our congregation asked Reverend Jack to be our settled minister, an act of love and appreciation for 5 years of dedicated service. We've had several people join the church even during the pandemic. We've raised enough money to get started on our new kitchen. As a board member, I'm personally hoping never to hear another discussion of a grease trap. So, why not optimism? You probably already know of studies that show how positive outlook has a good effect on everything from your health to your job performance. My prescription for a lack of optimism would be to watch the movie It's a Wonderful Life. In it, Jimmy Stewart's George Bailey is not an optimist, and he's having a really, really bad day. But the movie lives up to its name and shows us what really matters: friendship and service to others. It ends with everyone singing Auld Lang Syne. I won't torture you with my singing, but I'll close by reminding you of the song's most important line: "We'll take a cup of kindness yet." To all of you, a cup of kindness with a good dash of optimism and the traditional wish that this time is like a prayer. Happy New Year.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, There I go.
Closing words are some I use often, from the Persian poet Hafiz, 14th century. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. Let's have a week, a year, where we love one another like that and light up the whole sky. Thank you for being here and for listening. Hope to see you at coffee hour. Here are Michael and Randy with our chalice.
And now, as our service ends, with a breath, we pass the flame of our chalice lamp to each other as we say our closing words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Everyone is invited to join us right after this for our Zoom coffee hour check-in. The details will be on the screen in a minute. It's a great way to get to know one another. Thanks for joining us this morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Because I'm happy. Because I'm happy.